you all for joining. So we're gonna get started. We have a lot to cover today, and we'll introduce ourselves, but also just for reference as we get going. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get through them. So my name is Naama Avshalom. I'm a graduate student or a graduate candidate at the Graduate School of Education, and I'm also a fellowship advisor. And I'm joined here with Tyler and Ellen. Do you all want to say a quick hello?
Hi, I'm Tyler, a PhD candidate in the Department of Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies. Thanks for being with us today. I should also just mention that the webinar is being recorded, so you're welcome to stay off camera and muted. If questions come up, as Naama mentioned, plop them in the chat and we can get to them as you think of them. Towards the end, there'll be a Q&A session. You're welcome to comment or come on mute or share your video and pose your question too.
Hi, my name's Ellen. I'm a PhD candidate in planning and public policy and work here at the GradFund with Naama and Tyler.
So also one quick thing just before we get started is we've been asked here at GradFund to collect more information about who's coming. And so we have a little Qualtrics survey. We'll remind you at the end, but just, to have a little request both at the beginning and the end. If you could, before you leave, complete this Qualtrics survey, we'll put a link in the chat in a minute. Okay, so let's get started. So thinking about what we're going to do today, we're going to give you a quick overview about the AAUW, and then we're going to be talking about 3 different fellowships: the dissertation fellowships, or the American dissertation fellowships, the international fellowships, and the career development awards. And then we'll give you some additional tips about how to apply and what to think about when you're applying. And we'll talk about how we can help you here at GradFund. And at the end, there will be a Q&A, but as I mentioned, please drop your questions in the chat as you think about them, and we can get to them either as we talk or at the end of the Q&A. Okay, so just as a brief overview, the AAUW is the American Association of University Women. And this is an organization that's committed to advancing the education of women and girls. They're particularly focused on research, education, and advocacy, and they have a few different fellowships and grants that are specifically for women in various stages of their education or in project-based work. So right now, today we'll be talking about grants that are related to graduate work, particularly dissertation awards, but some are also open to masters. But there are also, if you're interested, many of these have a postdoctoral option, which is quite similar in terms of how you apply and what they're looking for, but there are a few smaller differences like stipends and so on. So if you have any questions about those, I would recommend checking out the website and also asking in the Q&A and also coming to GradFund. But today we're going to be focusing on the dissertation-based ones or the graduate-based ones. So we'll be talking about 3 dissertation awards, as I talked about earlier: the American Fellowship, the International Fellowship, and the Career Development Grant. So I think Tyler is going to start off by talking about the American Dissertation Fellowships.
Thanks, Naama. Here we go. All right, so the AAUW offers an American fellowship. They generally call it this. As Naama mentioned, they also, in this award category, allow you to apply for postdoctoral support. We're just going to be focusing on dissertation support for the purposes of a streamlined kind of presentation today. If you want to book an appointment, which we'll talk about towards the end to discuss postdocs, we can do that with you. As Naama was talking about, this award is administered by the AAUW. It provides a stipend of $25,000 to support living expenses while you as a PhD student completes your dissertation. and it must be used for the final year of dissertation writing. So it's not any stage within the PhD, you have to be finishing during the award tenure. So eligibility, it's for doctoral candidates who are studying at US-based institutions, which if you're at Rutgers, that's a US-based institution. You'll complete your degree and your dissertation during the academic year after the deadline. So if you're applying in the fall of this year, 2022, then you would be intending to graduate by spring/summer of 2024, the following academic year. You're a US citizen or permanent resident. Oops, I was just clicking through, and you identify as a woman, or basic eligibility criteria. So as we discussed, it was a one-year stipend of $25,000, and you'll likely have to craft a budget with this in this application, but the expenses, the stipend can be broken down into to support you however you see fit. So educational expenses, living expenses, dependent childcare, travel to professional meetings, conferences, and seminars are all eligible expenses within your budget. So there is, it's not readily available in terms of what the components are on the website, besides kind of these broad categories. Within the application portal, you'll actually see an application form that has specific narratives. So there's an eligibility quiz that you can take to make sure you're eligible. There's an application form within the application portal that collects general information. And then there are specific narratives, usually 3 or 4, that range in length between 300 to about 1,000 words that you'll need to prompts, basically, that you'll need to reply to. So it doesn't have a specific kind of statement of research that is outlined from the beginning. You'll find that within the application portal. So make sure you create an application to see those requirements. You'll also be required to submit a CV, transcripts, a dissertation certificate form that's verified by your program, a budget, and 3 letters of recommendation. So the timeline for this competition, it opened in August 1st. It's due this year, November 1st on Tuesday, so it is a really tight turnaround for this award. A notification of decision will be released by April 15th. And then the fellowship would begin tenure or be initiated, as we say, July 1st of 2023, and would take you through till June 30th, 2024. All right, so review criteria is something that's really important to consider while crafting your application. So we're going to go through 2 sets of review criteria that AAUW uses, and then it's universal across all 3 awards, but the specific criteria for each award changes. But they generally split it into these 2 primary components. So the first is applicant review criteria, and the second is project review criteria. What's important across both these categories is that scholarly excellence is the primary target, or the primary kind of merit measure of this application. All right, so how is applicant review criteria kind of measured, right? Or how's it scored? The AAUW usually does award some kind of point system, so you can expect that each of these components you'd receive a score. So it's important that you're really thinking carefully about how to address all of these in your application components. So there's the qualifications of the applicant, and these can be measured by many things, right? Transcripts, CV, professional experiences, etc. Your commitment to women's issues in the profession/community, mentoring of other women, right? And we'll talk about this in this additional tips section about like how to really strategically frame your research and you as a scholar to be aligning with the goals of AAUW, whose mission, as Nama mentioned, is to support women in higher education, right? Teaching experience, financial need. So these awards do have a financial need component. and you do need to speak to them. Potential to make a significant contribution to the field, right? So your scholarly kind of prowess and the importance of your research. It can be a positive selection factor if you're from an underrepresented racial or ethnic background, or also from an underrepresented area of the country and or research institution. So the project review criteria. So we talked about the applicant review criteria and what factors into forming like the kind of approach we're going to take to score you and your qualifications as an applicant. And then they also score your project specifically, right? And so what factors into this score is the originality of the project, the quality of the project design, scholarly significance of the project to the discipline, right? So is it really grappling with central debates, questions, arguments, within the discipline, right? What contribution is it making to furthering those debates, or is it intervening arguments, etc.? So, and what's really important too is the feasibility of the project and the proposed schedule. And so what this means is that you need to have a timeline, because this is a completion award, right? Of your expected work progress to be made during that year, right? During the fellowship year. So feasibility, meaning that there's a reasonable and attainable research plan / writing plan to finish the dissertation, right? So if you're saying you're going to draft 4 chapters in 3 months, that might not work for them, right? I mean, good luck to you. Maybe that could be a standard in your field, and that might be the case, and you can make that case, but you really have to justify it then, right? So the amount of work needs to be reasonable for the conventions and standards within your field. So just being aware of that and maybe consulting with your advisor on your actual timeline to degree would be a really good idea to make you competitive for this award, to make sure that you don't have too much work to do or too little work to do during the fellowship period. And I just want to emphasize again, I know I'm like nailing it on the head here, but the feasibility is like a very easy way for your application to be eliminated sometimes from the competition, right? So if you're demonstrating that you're too far along, that you almost have no work left, or you have too much work left, this is an easy way for reviewers to kind of place a red flag on your application. So just really putting some thought into what you're presenting as your timeline. All right, I think Nama's going to discuss the second award opportunity.
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about the International Fellowship. So the International Fellowship is also an AAUW award. It provides a stipend of between either $20,000 or $25,000 to support living expenses at any stage of your graduate study, and the amount is going to be based on where you're at in terms of your graduate work. So I believe that if you're working towards a master's program, you get $20,000, and if you're working towards a PhD, you get $25,000. And it supports women with at least 1 full year of graduate study remaining. So this is for master's and doctoral candidates who are studying at US institutions. So as Tyler was saying, if you're studying at Rutgers, that's a US institution, you have a full year of study remaining, who are not US citizens or permanent residents. So this is one area this award is different from the American Fellowship, which is for American citizens, and this one is for non-US citizens and who identify as women. So as I mentioned, there's a stipend. The stipend is going to depend on what stage of study you're at, but it's either $20,000 or $25,000. And the funds can be used for educational expenses, living expenses, childcare, travel to conferences, and so on. So the application components include a proposal, So what project are you doing? And you also have to include proof of your current enrollment, proof of your highest degree. So that's transcripts or an official letter. If you got your highest degree somewhere that's not the US, then you need to get those translated, I believe, into English. 3 letters of recommendation. You also have to include proof of English proficiency, and this will depend on where you did your undergraduate degree, and what what proof makes sense for you, but it's going to be either exam results from English exams or a transcript or a diploma showing that you got an undergraduate degree from an English speaking institution, or that you had a semester at an English speaking institution between 2020 and 2022. And again, you have to submit a budget for what you're going to be using this money for. So the timeline is the same. The competition opened in August, or rather the timeline is quite similar. Competition opened in August. The application deadline is November 15th. So you do have a little bit more time with this one, but again, it's coming up pretty soon. And then on April 15th, you will find out about the decision, and the fellowship tenure starts on July 1st, 2023, and will go until July 30th, 2024. So this is one of the areas that diverges from the American Fellowship. So the review criteria is applicants who are residing in their home country while they're applying, or who are from developing or emerging countries, or who are from an underrepresented group in any region, will receive special consideration. So that doesn't mean that you have to be in one of these groups, but it will help your application. You will also be judged on your position on your return to your home country. So they're interested in, for example, people who might be have additional, say, goals of returning to their home country and continuing work there, or expanding their influence in their home country later. They're also interested in your academic or your professional qualifications. So that's things like your grades, or what classes you took, what research you're doing. They want to show they're interested in you having demonstrated commitment to the advancement of women and girls in your home country. And they're also interested in you having demonstrated evidence of prior community or civic service, again, in your home country. So this kind of goes beyond the American Fellowship in the sense that they're not just interested in your interest in advancing women and girls generally, but specifically advancing women and girls in your home country. And also financial need and motivation for your graduate study. So what are you studying? What's your goal? In terms of your project review criteria, so this is your proposed time schedule. So as Tyler was saying, this is really important. You have to show that your project makes sense in the time scale that it is. They also want they're interested in the quality and feasibility of the proposed plan of study or research. So what do you plan on doing? And when do you plan on finishing it? And what are kind of your research goals? And they're also interested in your home country's need for the specialized knowledge or skill that you're developing. So you also have to make a case that it's not just that you're studying something because it's interesting, but you're also interested in applying what you're studying to your home country, and your home country needs you to be able to do that. So I think Tyler is now going to talk about one more grant. This is the Career Development Grant.
Thanks for your questions too. We'll definitely get to them towards the end. They're really good questions so far. And so you can see how these awards kind of vary and are getting more technically specific. and broad in terms of the eligibility category. So the first one, right, was just for Americans who are completing PhDs and their final year funding. International fellowships are, for international students who plan to return to their home countries after their degrees and are much more open in terms of eligibility, in terms of stage of study, right? So as long as you have one more year of graduate study, you can be in a PhD, you can be in a master's degree. The timing isn't as precise. And then this final award we're going to be talking about is even a bit more flexible with some restrictions, but it's a career development grant. And so it's, again, within the AAUW portfolio of awards, they have a few more too, which you're welcome to check out. These are the three that we're just discussing today. And this one provides a stipend, a really big range, so it's $2,000 to $20,000 to support study at least 8 years after a bachelor's degree. So that is like a major criteria. So many of us probably don't fit this category, but we'll discuss it anyways, just because maybe down the line, it might be useful. And because this award range in terms of the value is so wide, the budget becomes really important to this award. So it supports study and education, health and medical sciences, STEM and social sciences at the master's certificate, technical school, or bachelor's level, right? So it's really broad, but also it doesn't support PhDs. So just note that. It's for candidates who are studying at U.S. institutions and have not attained a graduate degree yet, and are U.S. citizens or permanent residents, and who identify as women. So very similar, but no, you cannot have a graduate degree yet. So a master's degree would make you ineligible if you have a different degree. So again, this is a one-year stipend of $2,000 to $20,000, and it's the same kind of set of expenses that are found in the other awards. So you detail these and make a budget. So the application components, again, you'll want to log into the application portal, even if you're interested in this award, just to really get the details of what's required of you, right? So we're not going into in this webinar, just because of time's sake, what's included in the proposals, but there are, as I talked about, various kinds of prompts that you'll want to log in and find out what those specific prompts are, because they are specific to each award. You'll need a budget, and then you'll also need a letter of recommendation from a college counselor or advisor, an instructor, or a work supervisor who knows you well. So the timeline for this award is the same as the International Fellowship. So the competition opened August 1st. It's due November 15th. Award notification would be April 15th. And the award tenure would be for the following academic year, July 1st to June 30th. Okay, so again, there's a different set of applicant review criteria for this award than the other two. So you want to really pay attention to this while crafting your responses within the proposal. So, I mean, across all of them, there is this universal kind of criteria, and the mission of AAUW, which is a demonstrated commitment to education and equity for women and girls. But specifically to this award, you need to be really clear about the reason for seeking higher education and or technical training, right? So if you're leaving a career, since there is a big gap here, 8 years between the bachelor's degree, you need to be really clear about like why, if you have a career or where you're at, like why is graduate education necessary for you at this point? Potential for success in your chosen field, right? So they're assuming you have a kind of career, and if you're going back to that field, why is this graduate degree going to be relevant? It could be beneficial to your application if you're from an underrepresented racial or ethnic background, and or from an underrepresented area of the country, or at a research institution during a year of the award that is not what we call like a top level or R1 research institution. applicant is seeking credentials in non-traditional fields. So that could also be a positive factor for selection. You know, if you're a woman in STEM that is primarily male dominated, this could be something that you would discuss in your application and really highlight. And financial need, again, is a criteria. So you need to demonstrate that these funds are really necessary to support your living and or educational expenses. All right, so the applicant review criteria, and then as we talked about, these two tier, which is the project review criteria is the second. And so there needs to be an alignment between the degree to which your study plan is consistent with your career objectives, right? So if you, are working in, let's say, data management, and you're doing a degree in chemical biology or something, like chemical biology, I don't even know what I'm saying, but basically, you know, like it needs to map onto, right? You need to justify why those particular educational skills you're going to gain are going to translate into your career objectives, right? Or if you want to switch, you can also, you know, use that approach as well. The quality of the written proposal, the documentation of opportunities in chosen field, right? So you're really outlining, you know, that this is a viable kind of plan, right? That there are careers that align with this trajectory that you've laid out for your educational trajectory. It kind of aligns with those career opportunities. Feasibility of the study plan and the proposed time schedule similar to others, and the validity of the proposed budget and narrative, including sufficient outside support. So that's kind of unique to this award in that there is a really honing in on the budget here, and it's assumed that you're also going to need some kind of outside support beyond just these funds. So that's something to take into consideration if you're applying for this award.
So so all of these awards, when you're thinking about applying for them, we have, you know, there are going to be some suggestions that are award specific, and we'll talk about how you can, for example, book with GradFund to get some of those. But there are some general tips that you can think about while you're crafting your application. So first of all, think through the review process. So your applications are going to be reviewed by volunteers, and depending on the award, which is just also something that's relevant as you're thinking about these three awards, but also as you're thinking about any other award that you're trying to apply for, they may or may not be academics, and they also may or may not be in your field. So, you know, you might know for a fact that your award is being looked at by academics, but they might not be in your field. And even in the particular cases, so in this particular award, they're not likely to be in your field. In some other kinds of awards, they might be, but they're unlikely to be in your specific subfield. So something to pay attention to when you're thinking about applying for awards is who are the reviewers going to be. And in this case, they're not necessarily going to be academics, and they're not necessarily going to be in your field. So you have to try to make the case that your research is important in a way that's very different from how you make that case, say, to your advisor or to your committee members. You need to make this, you need to write for a broader audience. Also, write to each proposal review criteria. So read all the criteria, and maybe as you're thinking about writing, brainstorm your answers to each of the different criteria, and make sure that all those answers end up in what you're writing. Make sure that you really speak to each criterion. And again, as I was saying, write to a multidisciplinary audience. People are not going to be experts in your subfield. Make sure that you're limiting the use of jargon or really specialized language that they need to be, say, experts in your field to know. So, you know, one great example, I was talking with a student some time ago, and he said that he was going to try to explain his work to his grandmother. so that he could show that this was, or so he could make sure that he was explaining in a way that was clear. So try to find people who are not necessarily really well versed in your subfield, and try to explain your work to them and see if they understand it the way that you're explaining. So as you're thinking about what to write and how to frame your research, because of course we can frame our research in lots of different ways, make sure that you go to the AAUW page or website and look up their mission, their vision, and their values. They have this like small version of this here, but they also that we've screenshotted, but there are also more detailed pieces. And make sure that you also look at through their strategic plan, which will give you a lot more information about what their goals are, what they want, what are they looking for, and then try to craft your application so that it speaks to those goals and their mission. So for example, one thing that's very important is they're really interested in your commitment to women's issues in the profession and in the community. And they're interested in your mentoring of other women. So you want to make sure that you explain your research and yourself in a way that highlights these areas. So in general, there are going to be a lot of different criteria, and make sure that you look at those really carefully and you highlight those in your application and frame your work in a way that aligns with the criteria, with the mission, the goals, and the strategic plan. So the other thing to think about is that behind every great application, behind every great writer are many editors and people who can support you. So think about who are the different support systems that you have and your key points of contact. So one thing to think about is every award has a person called a program officer. This is someone who is basically there, has to answer your questions. They have a lot of knowledge about the award, and they can get all your questions answered. So they can answer things about, you know, if you're not totally sure if you're eligible, or if you have questions about, say, your budget or the review process, or you're not really sure, like, oh, it says something about the requirements on the website, but I'm not really sure what that means. The program officer is there to help you. If you read the solicitation or the basically the page that says, like, here's what we want, here's who's eligible, they will tell you things like eligibility, any kind of formatting requirements that might be necessary, any kind of technical details, what things you need to include. And also just briefly to go along with that, something that you want to consider is you want to make sure that you log into the portal once you decide to apply sooner rather than later, because often the portals will have the specifics on, say, you know, what format they want you to put your CV information in or things like that. You really want to make sure that you log in sooner rather than later, because you don't want to be in a situation where you wrote these really amazing, say, proposals, and just your work is so great, and then you get there on the last day, just before you have to submit, and realize that they actually have some short answer questions that you need to answer that are just in the portal, or the formatting isn't exactly what they want. So just as you're looking through the solicitation and as you're thinking about applying, make sure that, like, once you make that decision, you log into their system. Another place that you can go to is a GradFund appointment, where we can help with kind of general proposal writing advice. We can help you with the clarity and organization of your proposal. We can basically help you along the way from figuring out all of the details of the award to reviewing your application and giving you advice. But we're not the only people who can help you with that. Another person to look to is your advisor or your faculty members. And they're going to be able to give you content-specific information about things like your methodology, your literature review, and like other standards in your field. So if you come to GradFund, we're not experts in your field, but your advisor is. So we can help in one way and your advisor can help in another way. And of course, also, if you have peers who are willing to help, then you might want to turn to them as well and kind of reciprocally get some help from them and help them in terms of things like copy editing and wordsmithing and those kinds of things.
All right, this is our last section before the Q&A, which we'll get to these great questions. I just want to give you an outline of who we are and how we can help you kind of develop applications for this award or others, right? So GradFund is an SGS service, which is a School of Graduate Studies, and our mission is to help students identify and apply for extramural merit-based funding. So we don't advise students, like if you want to apply for an internal award at Rutgers, we don't help with that. Our mission is to help you apply for things outside of Rutgers. Since our founding in 2000, we have helped Rutgers graduate students win approximately $100 million in external support. So we have a number of core services, and you're in one of them now, which is workshop and presentation, right? We also run mentoring programs, which you should look out for, which are kind of weekly kind of programs that allow you to become familiar with the kind of genre of fellowship writing, etc. We also offer digital resources, which I'll discuss. And then our most common and kind of our biggest service is individual meetings, right? And so I'll talk you through those individual meetings. So they're offered virtually, which gives you flexibility in terms of scheduling them, so you don't need to be on campus. And there's 3 types of meetings we offer. So there's a planning meeting, and this is where we walk you through how to become familiar with both the funding landscape. So we kind of talk about what it looks like, talk about your specific case and your stage of study, and how to kind of plan for that as you move through if you're in a PhD. How your stage of study will kind of change throughout your degree, and what awards you'll become eligible for. And we also show you the tools and resources that you'll need to navigate this landscape. So we kind of walk you through how to look for awards. We offer a second type of meeting, a help with the funder meeting. And so if you are interested in an award, something like AAUW, right? You've come to the webinar, and now you really want to wrap your head around your specific approach, right? So how you're going to apply for this award, like how you're going to pitch your narrative or organize, your experiences to be really compelling and align with the goals and mission of the funder. That's what this type of meeting is for. So it's kind of like a brainstorming meeting, as well as we try to do a deep dive with you into making sure that the fit is really tight between your research/career goals and the mission and goals of the funder, right? And then, so this is before. These 2 meetings are before you start really working on an application in terms of writing. The third type of meeting is an application review meeting. And so you would submit, and this is just for one award at a time, you would submit materials. They can be the entire application, they can be a specific document that's required in the application, and then we would review them together and provide general as opposed to specific content, but general feedback on just as similar to the help with the funder, which is like the fit in terms of, are you being effective and strategic in the way in which you're aligning your experience with the goals of the funder, and is the organization, clarity, structure of the proposal really working in your favor, right? Later, you can do it right off the bat if it works for you, but often students will start with one document and then build progressively towards the evaluating and kind of reviewing the entire application. And then we take like a kind of holistic look around how information is being conveyed within each specific document, but also across them, right? So Are you repeating information? Is there a kind of through line narrative that is really working in your favor? You know, the kind of flow of the application, and is it really compelling, right? And so to help you really create a competitive one. All right. So if you're interested in booking with a meeting with us, you can find us right on your My Rutgers portal. We'll usually have a widget towards the left and the top. That's fellowship advising for graduate students. You'd click the schedule an appointment. If you don't see this widget in your portal, then you can go to this kind of plus sign and type in GradFund, and it should just come up here, and you would click add. That's how to kind of confront that. We have a website, so it's gradfund.rutgers.edu. We also have our own database with over 3,000 graduate funding opportunities that you can search for awards through. So you can check out that. There's also under advice, there's a bunch of blogs that could be potentially useful. Another great resource that we offer is a Canvas self-paced guide to grants and fellowships, and it includes modules that will walk you through step by step, kind of the process of applying to external fellowships. And then it also offers specific kind of award information on some awards. So whether that's like a webinar like we're in now, or any other information might be up there. And you have to gain access through enrolling in this link, which we can paste in the chat in a minute. We also offer a YouTube page. So if you, this is new in our development, and to respond to the question of where this will be posted,